Welcome to the EchoCast, episode 61. A little bit early, huh? If you can't tell, I'm going to try a new little format here, bringing in the podcast I'm going to record it on Wednesdays. It'll be released on Fridays, but if you want to hear it on Wednesday, or Thursday, I guess, then you can check out my Patreon. So I'll give details on that in a moment. But if you're new to the podcast, this is a Division 2 focused podcast. I am Bond Diesel. I do stuff with the game, stream, and all that stuff. And I have lots of opinions. So some people like to hear them. Others like to dismiss them. If you're returning, I appreciate you coming back and listening to me. For some reason, you deserve an award. But I will give you a high five. I'm holding it up. Can't see it, but you know it's there. This week, I will do a State of the Game recap from today. I'll talk about the raid and some other stuff that's going on. A little bit of discussion about stuff that I feel like ranting about today. And we'll talk about a YouTube comment and some content updates. So, State of the Game recap. This was a pretty short one this week. We had Hamish and oh wow, thanks. Sorry, I don't know. And Chris, both comm devs of different longevity, but they've both been great and very interactive. So basically what they jumped into was talking about the raid and some upcoming patches, as well as giving us a little hint, a little wink about Tidal Update 4. So first, they gave congrats to all of the different platforms for the World's First and confirmed that the different platforms will show whatever World's First team was on their platform. I think that's definitely the right way to do it. I'm assuming that the PC team is still going to be the only one who gets the little rewards and stuff. That's fine. Whatever. Who cares? I'm just glad that they're going to recognize the different platforms, as I think they absolutely should. It's been shown, and they even said that it's a very different experience when you're on PC compared to the consoles. I'm really glad that the PS4 people got recognized. Fortunately, there's a little bit of controversy with maybe some Zim usage being admitted by the Xbox team. At the end of the day, I kind of doubt that's disqualifying, and I'm just glad that the console teams didn't have to make fun of any disabled people or any disabilities in their celebration. So if you know what I'm talking about, you will understand. If not, I'll look on Twitter. So right after that, they talked about that they will not be changing the difficulty of the raid. So Chris had actually been quoted, I think, by a Polygon or one of the websites on the forum, saying that they were considering changes. Something tells me a dev or some group of devs was like, hey, we are definitely not doing that. We're sticking to it. And they made sure to clear that up. What was interesting about that was that they very clearly stated that they understand there's a huge difference in the curve of the challenge between console and PC, but we're just gonna have to deal with it. So okay, we'll talk about that more in a minute. They did talk about some upcoming fixes and stuff that are happening. There's gonna be a Tidal Update 3.1 patch. I can't really figure out what they're doing with their patch numbers. At first they had like normal patch numbers, and then they started doing these Tidal updates, and it seems like that's how we're gonna do this, I guess. So we'll have a Tidal update, and then any patches before the next Tidal update will just build. So they were talking about Tidal Update 3.1. It seems like some of these changes and fixes I'm going to talk about may happen with 3.1, may not happen till 4. But things like the raid patch showing for people, even if you start with one and end it with another group, the NPC aggressiveness and speed appears to be a problem. Again, apparently it's a new issue, not the same as the old one. The mask fitment, they kind of shrunk all of the masks, it looks like, which led to some interesting looks in the game. The looting as junk option being gone on accident, I'm not really super sure how that happens, but I'll give them the benefit of the doubt that they'll be fixing up the pistol and rifle rate of fire. Right now, you can't shoot them even as fast as they say. I think there must have been some change happen in there to keep people from overfiring, especially the rifles, the MK17 and so on. But whatever they did, it went a little too far, and you can't actually even hit the posted rate of fire. The disappearing gun issue that they talked about when the raid came out, that there was the workarounds to like switch your weapons or to go into the menu and switch them and then switch them back. But that is going to be addressed, and just some sound issues. I think just the system they use here, the sound issues are maybe always going to exist in some capacity, but that's fine. They talked about Tidal Update 4 extremely briefly, didn't really give any major details, and definitely didn't give us any expected release dates. But they did point out that it would have a new specialization. During the trailer a while back, before the raid, it was kind of hinted that the next specialization is going to be a minigun. They kind of went back and forth and saying maybe it's the one we think, maybe it's going to be a different one. I mean, I'm sure it's going to be the minigun. I don't know. But Hamish did talk about doing like a whole stay of the game or some kind of feature on the new specialization, showing people how it works and how to use it and so on and so forth. I think that would be super cool. And then they did a bunch of agent highlights, and that was about it. So it was a pretty short one this week. Nothing too crazy. I do think it was a perfect decision to split up the world first. It only makes sense to kind of celebrate who actually did it. I think the some of the things around some of that, the PC thing, I mean, some of those people are provocateurs. They enjoy getting attention by any means necessary, and that's fine. I think the Zim thing with the Xbox group is interesting. Long story short, on Reddit, one of the people that was in the Xbox World's First group just kind of casually mentioned that one of the players was using a Zim mouse and keyboard. Then it blew up and people were freaking out, and they claim that person didn't really do that much. Apparently there's footage of this raid and that people can't really tell which one it even was. I'm under the impression those Zims are awful, especially with a game like The Division. So I don't really think it matters. I still think it's kind of shady. And I don't know why you would just come out and tell if everyone, especially on Reddit, good Lord, of all the places that people are gonna freak out, that's the one. So I think that's cool. I'm glad that they're doing it that way. I have to admit that it really kind of digs at me a little bit, that they're like acknowledging how different the experiences of the raid are depending on your platform. I'm going to talk about this more in the little discussion, here in a few minutes. But I think that there's just like a misunderstanding or people talking past each other on this issue, where there's people who are saying that people just want it to be easy and they want a participation trophy, which I think is false, or at least with most people. And then there's the people who just want the experiences to be similarly difficult, which is where I'm kind of at. And I think that group is being willfully ignored by the other for whatever reason. It's super weird. I have lots to say about it, and I'll save it for a minute. I will say, though, that the fixes for 3.1 sound great. Sounds like they're addressing most of the things I've been seeing around. I mean, there's still people upset that they've basically, kind of, at least for now, punted the PvP problems. The matchmaking thing, they've kind of addressed it by saying that they're going to attack it in some way. It seems like the fixes they want to do and that they talked about doing are good. And the Tidal Update 4, I mean, they didn't give us much. If I had to go out on a wild guess, I'm gonna say that Tidal Update 4 will probably come at like the middle or end of June, probably end, if not early July. And I highly suspect that Tidal Update 4 will be the patch that introduces the first DLC, Episode 1, DC Outbanks or DC, whatever, the Expeditions one. So if I had to guess, that's what that is going to be. I was kind of browsing through, looking for any news for this week. I really haven't found anything significant. I suspect here at some point they're going to start talking a little bit about how sales went. I know that they already had a a call talking, that Ubisoft did, talking about how the sales were a little bit disappointing on console for the game, but were 10 times more on Uplay, which was funny because that led to a bunch of people during this PC console conversation to say, well, barely any console players even bought the game, so that's why they're focusing on PC. Well, something to keep in mind is that Division 1 was on Steam, which is where I would assume the vast majority of people buy their games. So Division 2 only being on Uplay and the Epic Store, which has its own issues, seems like a pretty clear explanation for why there were so many more copies of PC sold compared to Division 1 on Uplay. But what I think people don't realize is that chances are, despite the fact that the consoles didn't sell as expected, I suspect they probably almost doubled up PC sales. If you look at the sales numbers that they showed in this report, a majority of their sales went to PS4 and Xbox, with a good chunk towards PC, but that was all of their games, and they have a decent number of games that are only on PC or primarily only played on PC. I'd be willing to bet that Rainbow Six Siege is actually has a higher player base on PC, which kind of bucks the trend of most cross-platform games. But yeah, so I think that was kind of the only news I really found. I didn't really notice anything else. Kind of jumping into discussions and stuff kind of jumps back to what I was saying before. I've just had this interesting experience with this whole PC console thing, and what I keep seeing is that there's people on console who are saying, hey, this experience, I'm watching these people play on PC, and this experience just seems different. And the point I think people need to take in. So if you're a PC player and you just don't get what all these console people are whining about, or if you're a console person who has beaten the raid 15 times already, which I don't think is a thing, but if you have, just hear me out for a moment. And if you're a console player that feels this way, then let me know. Let me know in the comments or not. I don't know. If you disagree, I'd love to hear from you too. But what's happening is, and I can't really decide what the intentions of it are, but there's this situation that's happening where people are saying, hey, or at least I'm saying, I'll talk about me, I won't say people. I am saying, hey, this experience isn't the same. You've got an experience from PC players that I'm sure is challenging, that it appears to be challenging, but it's getting to the point where some of the really good teams are beating this mission in 20 minutes. And it seems, and I need to pull up, I should have done it before I did the podcast, but maybe I'll take a peek later. I imagine if you look at the leaderboards right now, that the number of teams that have completed the raid on PC is probably very much larger, even today, than Xbox or PS4. And what's happening, it's weird. There's this backlash. Either it's from people who I've never heard of, or people who I'm very familiar with and find myself, I think, consider myself friendly with them. Is that there's this weird backlash of like, don't make it easier. Do not make this raid easier. And the problem I'm having with that is that that's not what I'm asking for. And I suspect the way I'm looking at this isn't that much different than how most people are looking at it. Do I think that there's some players out there on PC and on console who just want to get the rewards? Well, of course. I'm not dumb. There's people who are really bad at this game who think they deserve to have everything. That's not what I'm advocating. And what annoys me is that every time I pipe up, there's people jumping on and just throwing their opinion at me that they don't want that to happen, that I shouldn't be saying that. The problem is that these people aren't even reading what I'm saying, or they're not asking questions to figure out what I'm saying, if maybe I don't express it very well. What I'm saying is I want a as equal as possible difficulty when I play on PC and when I play on console. Right now we do not have that. I don't think there's anyone who would say that that's what we have right now. That the difficulty of someone who picks up the sticks and plays through it on PS4 or Xbox feels the same as someone on PC, and there's gonna be that first jump to it, and it's accurate. It is accurate. to say, well, obviously the PC is going to be easier because you can aim easier with some of the mechanics of this. You have to be very precision based, and it helps a lot. It makes the clears very much quicker. And I'm acknowledging that. I'm saying, yes, I agree. That is a fact. But the problem is that with the Division 2 is that the game that's on your Xbox and the game that's on your PC hard drive is the exact same game. They have not separated this game out. So the same way that people were upset that that the PvE and PvP stats weren't being done differently, therefore if they patched one stat, it was going to ruin it for both. Well, that's not the case. They are separating how PvE and PvP talents work and stuff. But what I think is worth saying is that I believe that not separating the balance between PC and console is way worse and way more impactful on the playing experience of someone who it's more impactful for someone than if they didn't separate PvE and PvP stuff. If you don't agree, that's fine. But what I think is happening is that, and it happened in Division 1 too, and where they, there was stuff, just the simple difficulty of the game. Now, by the end of Division 1, everyone was all maxed out, and even on console, it was fairly easy. But there's a stark difference. I'm sure if you go back and look at the numbers, you look at the average time to kill on an NPC in Division 1 for PC players and for console players, it's just gonna be lower on PC. And I'm not disputing why. It's because of the mouse and keyboard. I understand that. But what I'm saying is that doesn't make sense. Like, that's not a fun experience. That means that the experience of one whole platform is completely different and arguably easier and more fun for the PC players than it is the console players. And it's because of headshots. It's headshots is the biggest difference. Obviously, with the raid specifically, there's some little specific things about the way the raid plays, but just in general. And the problem with that is what I just said, is that it's just a harder experience for one. And the way to alleviate it is, say, on console, the NPCs have a little bit less health. You look at the big difference in the time to kill, and you lower the health of console NPCs a little bit, and it brings it more in line. Like, that might be as simple as what I'm asking for. I'm not asking for auto aim to be easier or more controlled, because honestly, the auto aim, I think, ends up hurting most console players because it's chest focused, not head focused. I'm not asking for fewer NPCs. I'm not asking for NPCs to lay down and let you kill them because I'm a dirty pleb console player. I'm literally just saying that there's just little tiny tweaks that could be done to make the two experiences much more similar. And the first reaction, I'm sure, from some people would be like, well, if you lower the health, you're making it easier. It's like, technically, I guess, but from a point of view of actually, like thinking about it, you realize that you're not making it easier, you're just making it more similar. It's just interesting because a lot of the pushback I've seen is from people who are only playing PC, who haven't even tried this raid on console. And I'm sure that, especially if they do some clears on PC, they'll have a good idea of how it all works. They'll maybe even have a good number of people who they can put together and do the raid on console, and it'll be fairly easy for them, but it probably won't be. And the same way I've been repeatedly questioned, like, well, have you even done the raid? It happened today. Well, I have. Now, to be fair, it's only been for a few hours, because I didn't have our group simply couldn't get past, it couldn't do it. We were bad. We weren't bad, we just weren't good enough. And in the same way that I've been questioned repeatedly about whether I've played it or not, it doesn't seem to work if I question back, like, well, have you played it on console? That doesn't seem to matter. So if I hadn't played the raid, which I have, that would be a reason to dismiss my opinion. But if you haven't played it on console, well, that's fine. You get it. You just don't think that there's a point. Like I think most people can understand why that is at least frustrating to someone like myself, probably a lot of other people. What I think definitely didn't help today was, and it should be very clearly stated that I haven't seen any proof of it, but I'll give it the benefit of the doubt that there's a PS4 team who beat the raid in 50 minutes. That's pretty damn good. That's getting down. I think the fastest I'd seen before was like 3 hours or something. So getting down to 50 minutes, that's pretty damn good. Unfortunately, what what happens when that comes out is everyone who's been arguing against this point that I've been trying to make sees that as proof that I'm wrong. Which, and maybe it is. That's up to you. I don't think it is, and it's because it just ignores what I've been trying to say the whole time, and it only focuses on what they've been arguing that has nothing to do with what I'm saying. And what was a real bummer is that Julian Garrity responded to this tweet that said that someone on PS4 beat it in 50 minutes, and he just said, the raid is impossible on console. In what I take as a very passive aggressive and sarcastic, see guys, it's not that bad. And like, that's a real bummer to me. I've only like kind of met Julian a few times. I got to see him at E3 a couple times last year in 2018. I saw him earlier this year before the game came out at an event I was invited to, and I super appreciate it. This dude's really passionate about the game and just games in general. He has kind of a funny sense of humor, so I'm trying to give him the benefit of the doubt in his little comment there. But the problem is that there's already a lot of console players who kind of feel their fifis are hurt, which everyone takes this hardcore stance when it's in their favor, but they already kind of feel like they're being a little bit ignored. They're kind of being attacked by these other players in the community, which is fine. Like, I don't really give a crap. But then they see someone kind of his notability kind of dismissing them as well, and kind of poking a little fun and stuff like that, and that just was a real bummer to me. And it's kind of I suspect for a lot of people it was kind of a slap in the face. Now, are people gonna say, oh, he was just kidding around, don't be so serious? Maybe, I'm sure he was kidding around. He seems like a nice guy. I don't think he'd be a jerk on purpose, but that's just a bad move, man. Like, you've got people speaking out, you've got people being vocal, you've got people who just want it to be easy, and honestly they should be ignored. And that's probably me being a big hypocrite right now, but people who just want it to be easier, ignore them. I don't care about that. I'm not fighting that fight. I think that's a bad fight to fight. But to throw out that comment, especially someone in his position, to say that was just a real bummer. It was just like kind of disheartening for someone like me who's been trying to like get this point across that no, we don't want it easier, we just want it to be similar. We want it to be a similar experience, not drastically different. And I don't know, that was a bummer. Again, I'll give him the benefit of the doubt. I'll assume that it wasn't meant to be kind of the way it seemed, but I don't know. I don't think it's a great look. And on top of the state of the game kind of being like, oh yeah, it's way harder, but we're not gonna do anything about it. I think that even if you don't agree with all of that stuff, I hope that people can at least say, yeah, I get why that isn't cool. Man, that's a bummer. I don't have any hard feelings against anyone or anything for the most part. It's just this whole thing, I'm just seeing just such a lack of empathy. Like, there's just no one's even attempting to like put themselves in other people's shoes or to ask questions. And that's kind of what my next topic was about here, is that it's kind of a trend I've seen in the Division 2 discussions. Now, for full clarity, in Division 1, I was involved on Reddit, of all places. You've probably heard this before. So that was rough, right from the beta until about a year and a half after Division 1 came out. And that's when I finally started getting involved on Twitter and Twitch and YouTube and stuff like that. Before, I was just on Reddit. And what I realized is that while Reddit was definitely rough, I missed, so the stage of, a fairly newly released Division 2, the stage that this game is in, I wasn't around Division 1 at this same stage. At least not in the same way, and definitely not as a quote unquote creator. If I'm even, I don't know, I'm so small. Like, I don't consider myself like notable really. But a few people pay attention to things I say, and I guess I just missed this in Division 1, because even by the time I came in Division 1, things were crazy. I want to say it was around like 1.5 or something, and things were nutty already. Things were crazy in the community, but it seems like I missed this part. And I guess for the better. I mean, because I just, like every big discussion that's been had in the community so far, PvP, I feel like, was the first big one. Matchmaking, before the raid came out, was another big one. And now this kind of PC console, this difficulty discussion, they just all kind of take the same tone, and it ends up just being a bunch of people talking past each other, kind of just being nasty to each other. Some people even just straight up just dismissing what someone says to them, and so that they can get their words out. And kind of where I really hope people will go with this is like, listen to other people. If you're someone who doesn't think that the game needs to be balanced differently, if you think the raid should be impossibly hard, and not even impossibly hard, it's very easy for some people, but if you think it, only a few people should be able to finish it and just leave it exactly the way it is, that's awesome. That's fine. That's okay. But what I would suggest is, instead of shoving that down someone's throat who thinks differently, maybe ask them some questions. Maybe try to understand why they think differently. Instead of just attack dog, being an attack dog and going after them, say, man, I don't know, I think it should stay the way it is. You want it to be easier. Why? And what you're probably going to have happen, at least with me, I would say, no, I don't want it to be easier. I just want the experience to feel similar. I think your experience seems easier than mine. And I feel like you would be annoyed if it was the other way around. And then you may say, man, you know what? That kind of makes sense. Because one thing, on a little side note, one thing I haven't seen anyone say is, man, we should make the PC experience way harder. We're not seeing that. And the thing is about this whole discussion has been that I get it. Like, I get the problem. So since we all play one version of this game, all three platforms, PC, PS4, Xbox, we all have the same game. So if you do something to try to make the game a little more catered to console players, you're actually probably going to make it even easier for PC players. And they don't want that, because it's already easier, by most accounts. And so what that comes down to is this issue of, the game not being balanced separately. I've had some discussions about people who I respect a ton about this. And I'm basically just under the impression that when you, and I'm thinking about other games as well, and I've looked into it with some other games that are similar to the Division. And the reason that games won't separate, they won't have one version for PC and one version for consoles, is because then you basically develop two games, and that's expensive. It slows down patches, it slows down, it can cause more issues, especially as games diverge more and more between the platforms. And so, like, I get it, I get why that's hard to do, but what's tough for me is that it's like not even being acknowledged in any serious way, and if anything, it's being mocked. And when it's mocked by people in the community, thicken the skin up a bit. Who cares what people think? But then when it's like kind of mocked by people who, like, we kind of trust to work on this game, and we kind of, when we spend money on this game, these are the people that we're saying, hey, I'm giving this money to this game, and I'm hoping, I'm trusting you to take care of it, and to make it into something that's fun for as many of us as possible. I think that there's just this weird attitude of, like, if they designed like highways only for like 35 or 40% of cars, and the rest of them, they didn't really care, those drivers would be pretty mad, and that may not be the best comparison on earth, but there's just this weird thing where it's like, man, like, it's a weird choice to kind of almost, I don't want to say not ignore, but maybe just be like, oh, you guys will be fine. And especially when you're talking to a majority of the players. Probably not much of a majority. I'm guessing it's like a 60-40 split, console to PC. But like, that's a weird rope to walk. But it is what it is. What I'll close with on this little thing is that it's fun. It's fun in a way to go back and forth with people, to exchange ideas and stuff. But like, that's not what's happening very much. And specifically, it's happened to me a few times already where, I'm throwing out an idea, and someone not involved in the conversation, um, pops in, and that's fine. It's Reddit. It's a public platform. If I say something to someone and a third person wants to jump in, go nuts. I do it. I do it all the time. Conversations happen in between A and B, and I become C. I think that's fine. But if that happens, I really think it's a bad look to do that and basically just try to shout down or shut down or just dismiss someone to just to just make your opinion known and just not even consider and to basically just ignore anything else. Let's have a conversation. Try to understand me. I'll try to understand you. I think if people would just do that a little bit more, these conversations would actually maybe, be constructive in some way, rather than just ending with one person giving up because they know it's pointless. That said, I'm kind of hoping that we can start to button up some of this stuff and move on to what's coming. 3.1, Tidal Update 4, probably the first episode of the DLC. Wow, that was weird. I have a really strong feeling that E3 will bring us a bunch of news about what's coming in the division. Probably episode 1. I wouldn't even be surprised if maybe they preview episode 2 in some capacity, but we'll see. I suspect that when they focus on episode 1, that's going to be the main thing that they wanted to get out there. So there it is. I hope you enjoyed my rants. I assume that's why you're here, and especially if you're still here. I did have kind of a neat comment from Tim Mose. I did a video. You can check it out on YouTube. It's where I speculate about episode 1 of the Division 2 and what I think it's going to be. Too long didn't read. I think it's going to be survival, and I give a bunch of reasons why I think that. But in response to that, Tim said, I saw something on the loading screen tips or an audio message about a secret passage out of the White House. Maybe one of those NPCs knows the way and it takes you to new content. So the NPCs that Tim is talking about is one of the reasons, or one of the clues I think we're getting for episode 1, is that there's 2 new named NPCs in the base of operations, and they don't have any purpose right now, but every other named NPC has some type of purpose that's in the boo. So my guess is that you interact with them for episode 1 content, but we will have to wait and see. I don't really know if there's a connection, Tim, between all these, because there's probably a bunch of secret passages out of the White House in case of emergency. But I wouldn't be surprised if at some point we have like a little mission that we have to do and something like that. Kind of like the mission we have to do to unlock Tidal Basin, where you have to go down to that little secret security, I don't know what it was, science room, lab. And but yeah, we'll see. I could be wrong, and maybe you are dead on. So with some content updates to wrap this baby up, the Division 2 branded Amazon Echo Dot giveaway. I'm giving away 2 of them. That ends on the 29th. So if you don't see any links to that where you're taking in this podcast, you can go check out my Twitter. It's @BondDiesel, and there should be a link somewhere. I've been retweeting it fairly often so people can jump in. As I said at the top, I am trying out a new release date for these episodes of the EchoCast. I will be posting these. I'll be recording and posting on Wednesday. It'll post to Patreon until Friday morning, and then it'll go on to Spotify and iTunes and Anchor and all those places. If you want to listen to it on Patreon early, any of the tiers of support will get you there. And I have a goal where if I hit 10 patrons, I'll start doing, patron only little update podcast that will probably be especially interesting once the baby comes. But yeah, that's up to you. If you want to support on Patreon, it's completely up to you. That is patreon.com/theechocast. Yeah, I think that's about it. I had a couple more topics here, but I already hit them in my rant up there. So if you like the podcast, please follow on whatever platform you are currently using. If you're on iTunes, please rate the podcast and leave a little review for me. It really helps me with getting noticed on there. If you check the podcast out on YouTube and you want to see more, please sub the channel, like the video, comment down, in the comments. Good, bad, ugly. Let me know what you think. I am curious. And I am on Twitch, where I stream multiple times a week, and I'm on Twitter, both as Bond Diesel, where you can find links to all kinds of other stuff I get myself into. And you get to be annoyed by more ranting, typically. So that's up to you. Okay, that's all I have. So, until next time.